The Bridge Builder. Young Paul Hogan's journey to authentic leadership. In the steel gray dawn of 1982, 32-year-old Paul Hogan climbed the Sydney Harbor Bridge with calloused hands and dreams bigger than the harbor below, unaware that this ordinary morning would begin an extraordinary journey of authentic leadership that would transform not just his own life, but inspire millions around the world to believe that genuine character and working-class wisdom could triumph over privilege and pretense in ways that previous generations thought impossible. Paul had been a bridge worker for 8 years, rising each morning before sunrise to join his crew in the dangerous and demanding work of maintaining Australia's most iconic structure. But unlike his colleagues who saw only steel beams and rivet guns, Paul saw metaphors everywhere, connections that needed building, foundations that required strengthening, and gaps that could be bridged through understanding, humor, and genuine human connection that transcended the social divisions that kept ordinary people from achieving extraordinary things. The morning that changed everything began when Paul noticed a young apprentice named Danny Morrison struggling with both the physical demands of the work and the merciless teasing of older workers who saw vulnerability as weakness rather than opportunity for mentorship. At 32, Paul had learned that real strength came not from dominating others but from lifting them up. And something in Danny's determined struggle reminded him of his own early days when encouragement from the right person at the right moment had made all the difference. "Easy there, mate," Paul said, approaching Danny with the gentle authority that came from experience rather than ego. "That rivet gun's got more kick than an angry kangaroo. Here, let me show you a trick that'll save your shoulder and double your speed." What followed was more than technical instruction. It was Paul's first conscious act of authentic leadership, the beginning of a personal philosophy that would eventually influence millions of people across multiple continents. He didn't just teach Danny how to use the tools, he taught him how to find dignity in hard work, how to transform challenge into opportunity, and how to maintain authentic character in environments that often rewarded conformity over creativity. The other workers watched Paul's mentorship with initial skepticism that gradually transformed into respect as they saw how his approach increased not just Danny's effectiveness but team morale and productivity. Paul was discovering that leadership wasn't about position or authority, it was about service, authenticity, and the ability to see potential in people that they couldn't yet see in themselves. This revelation would become the foundation for everything Paul would later achieve in entertainment, business, and cultural influence. But at 32, working on the Sydney Harbor Bridge, he was just beginning to understand that his greatest talent wasn't humor or charisma, it was the ability to help others become their best selves while remaining completely authentic to his own working-class values and genuine character. Chapter 1: The Foundation of Authentic Leadership. Paul Hogan's understanding of authentic leadership began not in boardrooms or entertainment studios, but in the unforgiving environment of construction work where pretense was impossible and character was revealed through actions rather than words. At 32, he had developed a reputation among his fellow bridge workers as someone who could be trusted completely, a man whose word was his bond and whose humor could lighten the heaviest load without diminishing the seriousness of dangerous work that required absolute reliability. The bridge crew represented a cross-section of Australian working-class masculinity, from grizzled veterans with decades of experience to young apprentices trying to prove themselves worthy of acceptance. Paul occupied a unique position in this hierarchy, respected for his competence and reliability, but also valued for his ability to maintain team cohesion through difficult periods when personalities clashed and pressure threatened to fragment the group's effectiveness. Tommy Richardson, a 60-year-old foreman with hands like leather and eyes that had seen everything twice, became Paul's first real teacher in authentic leadership, though neither man would have used such formal terminology to describe their relationship. Tommy led through example rather than command, demonstrating that true authority came from competence, consistency, and genuine care for the welfare of people under his supervision. "Leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, Paulie," Tommy explained during one of their regular lunch breaks high above the harbor. "It's about being the voice that people trust when things go wrong. When there's danger, confusion, or conflict, they need to know you'll tell them the truth and stand by them regardless of what it cost you personally." This lesson resonated deeply with Paul's natural instincts about human relationships and social responsibility. He had always been drawn to people who demonstrated integrity under pressure, who maintained their principles even when compromise might have been easier or more profitable. Tommy embodied these qualities while also showing Paul that leadership could be exercised with humor, humility, and genuine affection for the people you serve. The practical application of these principles came when Paul volunteered to mentor new apprentices, a responsibility that many experienced workers avoided because it required patience, empathy, and willingness to accept responsibility for others' development without receiving additional compensation or formal recognition. Paul discovered that he had natural talent for teaching and encouraging, but more importantly, he found deep satisfaction in helping others develop confidence and competence that would serve them throughout their careers. Danny Morrison became Paul's first major mentorship success, transforming from a nervous apprentice who barely met minimum performance standards into one of the crew's most reliable workers. But the transformation went beyond technical skills. Danny developed self-confidence, leadership potential, and authentic character that would eventually lead to his own promotion to supervisory responsibilities. "You did something for me that nobody had ever done before," Danny told Paul years later when he had become a successful contractor with his own company. "You believed in me before I believed in myself, and you showed me that being authentic was more important than trying to impress people by pretending to be someone I wasn't. That changed everything for me." Paul's success with Danny led other workers to seek his guidance and support, creating an informal mentorship network that improved overall crew performance while building relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical authority. Tommy Richardson noticed these developments and began giving Paul increased responsibility for training new workers and resolving conflicts between crew members who brought personal problems to work. The bridge environment provided perfect laboratory for developing authentic leadership skills because the consequences of failure were immediate and serious. Trust had to be earned through consistent demonstration of competence and reliability, while leadership effectiveness was measured by tangible results rather than impressive rhetoric or political maneuvering that might work in other environments but would be exposed as fraudulent in construction work. Paul learned to communicate complex technical information in ways that different personality types could understand and remember, adapting his teaching style to match individual learning preferences while maintaining consistent standards and expectations for everyone. He discovered that effective leadership required balancing encouragement with accountability, support with challenge, and patience with urgency depending on situational requirements and individual needs. The humor that would later make Paul famous in entertainment was developed during this period as a leadership tool for maintaining team morale during difficult or dangerous work. He learned that well-timed jokes could diffuse tension, redirect negative energy, and create shared experiences that bonded people together while never undermining the serious attention to safety and quality that construction work demanded. More fundamentally, Paul's bridge experience taught him that authentic leadership was about service rather than self-advancement, about building others up rather than promoting yourself, and about maintaining integrity regardless of external pressures or temptations to compromise your values for short-term advantage. These lessons would become the foundation for his approach to entertainment, business, and cultural influence that would eventually impact millions of people worldwide. By his mid-30s, Paul had developed a personal leadership philosophy based on authenticity, service, and genuine care for others' welfare that would guide all his future decisions and relationships. He didn't yet know that this philosophy would soon be tested in environments far different from construction work, where the stakes would be higher and the temptations to compromise much greater. But the foundation had been laid. Paul Hogan understood that real leadership came from character rather than position, from service rather than self-promotion, and from authentic relationships rather than manipulative tactics designed to achieve personal advantage at others' expense. These insights would prove invaluable when opportunities arose that could either corrupt his values or amplify his positive influence depending on how he chose to handle success, fame, and the responsibilities that came with public platform. Chapter 2. The Mentor's Emergence. The transformation of Paul Hogan from skilled bridge worker to natural mentor began with a crisis that tested everything he had learned about authentic leadership and revealed his capacity for inspiring others to achieve potential they didn't know they possessed. When economic pressures threatened massive layoffs in Sydney's construction industry, Paul emerged as an unofficial leader who helped his colleagues navigate uncertainty while maintaining dignity, hope, and commitment to excellence that would serve them regardless of immediate employment outcomes. The announcement came on a cold Tuesday morning in May. Budget cuts would eliminate 30% of the bridge maintenance crew within 6 weeks, with decisions based on seniority and performance evaluations that suddenly acquired life-changing importance. The news hit the younger workers particularly hard, as they faced the prospect of unemployment in a contracting industry where experienced positions were increasingly scarce and competition for available jobs was intensifying daily. Paul watched his colleagues' reactions with growing concern for their psychological and financial welfare, but also with recognition that this crisis provided opportunity for authentic leadership that could make real difference in people's lives. Rather than focusing on his own job security, which was relatively safe due to his seniority and performance record, Paul began reaching out to the workers who were most vulnerable to layoffs. "Listen, mate," Paul told Danny Morrison, who was now facing possible termination just 2 years into his apprenticeship. "This isn't the end of anything. It's the beginning of something different. You've got skills now, confidence, and work ethic that will serve you anywhere. But more importantly, you've got character, and that's what employers really value when they're looking for people they can trust." Paul organized informal evening sessions where experienced workers shared knowledge and contacts with colleagues facing layoffs, creating networking opportunities and skill-sharing arrangements that increased everyone's employment prospects while building relationships that would last far beyond the current crisis. These gatherings became legendary among the bridge crew for their combination of practical assistance and morale-building camaraderie that transformed potential desperation into determined optimism. But Paul's most significant contribution during this period was his development of what he called portable leadership, the idea that leadership skills developed in one environment could be transferred to any situation where people needed guidance, inspiration, or someone willing to take responsibility for collective welfare. He began coaching his colleagues on how to present themselves effectively in job interviews, how to demonstrate their competence to potential employers, and how to maintain confidence during a difficult transition period. The skills we've learned on this bridge aren't just about construction, Paul explained during one of these sessions. We've learned how to work reliably under pressure, how to communicate effectively with different personality types, how to solve problems creatively, and how to maintain safety and quality standards even when things get chaotic. Those are leadership skills that every industry needs. The success of Paul's mentorship during this crisis attracted attention from outside the construction industry. John Cornell, a television producer who had been observing Paul's natural charisma and leadership ability, approached him with an opportunity that would test whether authentic working-class leadership could translate to entertainment industry success without compromising the values that made it effective in the first place. "I've been watching how you handle people," Cornell told Paul during their first meeting. "You have something that can't be taught or faked, the ability to make others feel confident and capable while remaining completely genuine yourself. That's exactly what television needs, but only if you can maintain that authenticity in an environment that tends to corrupt people's natural character." Cornell's offer represented more than just career advancement. It was an opportunity to amplify Paul's positive influence beyond the limited scope of construction work to reach audiences who might benefit from exposure to authentic leadership principles. But it also presented dangers of ego inflation, value compromise, and disconnection from the working-class communities that had shaped his character and provided foundation for his leadership effectiveness. Paul's decision to explore television opportunities was motivated not by personal ambition, but by recognition that his leadership philosophy might serve larger purposes if he could find ways to communicate authentic character and working-class wisdom to broader audiences without sacrificing the integrity that made his influence valuable in the first place. He was particularly interested in the possibility of representing working-class values in media environments that typically ignored or misrepresented ordinary people's experiences and perspectives. The transition from bridge work to television required Paul to adapt his leadership style to very different environments and relationships, but the fundamental principles remained constant: authenticity, service to others, and commitment to building people up rather than tearing them down. His early television appearances demonstrated that these principles could be effective in entertainment context while also revealing new challenges and opportunities for positive influence. Tommy Richardson provided crucial guidance during this transition, reminding Paul that real leaders remain grounded in their original communities and values regardless of external success or recognition. "Don't let them change who you are, Paulie," the old foreman advised. "The world needs more authentic leaders, not more celebrities who've forgotten where they came from and what matters most." Paul's emergence as a mentor figure extended beyond individual relationships to influence team culture and organizational effectiveness in ways that created lasting positive change. His colleagues began adopting his approaches to conflict resolution, skill development, and mutual support, creating ripple effects that improved working conditions and job satisfaction for everyone involved in their projects. The bridge work experience had taught Paul that effective mentorship required balancing challenge with support, maintaining high standards while providing encouragement, and helping others develop independence rather than dependence on external guidance. These insights would prove essential as he moved into entertainment industry relationships where the temptations to use influence for personal advantage rather than others' benefit were much greater and more subtle. As Paul prepared to leave construction work for television opportunities, he established what would become his signature approach to success, using whatever platform or influence he achieved to lift up others while maintaining authentic connection to the values and communities that had shaped his character. This commitment would be tested repeatedly as his fame and influence grew, but the foundation established during his bridge work years provided stable reference point for navigating challenges that destroyed less grounded individuals. The mentor was ready to emerge on a larger stage, carrying working-class wisdom and authentic leadership principles into environments where such qualities were desperately needed but rarely demonstrated by people with access to significant platforms for positive influence. Chapter 3: Building Bridges to Dreams. Paul's transition from bridge construction to television represented more than career change. It was an experiment in whether authentic working-class leadership could maintain its effectiveness and integrity when transplanted to entertainment industry, environments that operated according to very different values and expectations. At 33, Paul carried with him the leadership lessons learned from 8 years of mentoring colleagues. managing crisis, and building team cohesion under conditions where failure could mean physical danger or economic disaster. The television studio environment initially overwhelmed Paul with its artificial complexity and emphasis on image over substance, but his approach remained consistent with principles developed during bridge work: focus on authentic relationships, deliver reliable performance, and look for opportunities to help others succeed while maintaining personal integrity, regardless of external pressures or temptations to compromise core values. John Cornell proved to be an ideal partner for Paul's television development because he understood that Paul's authentic appeal was his greatest asset and should be protected rather than modified to fit conventional entertainment industry expectations. Cornell's vision was to create programming that showcased real Australian character and humor without the pretensions or artificial sophistication that characterized most television content of that era. The beauty of working with Paul is that he doesn't need to act, Cornell explained to skeptical network executives who questioned whether working-class authenticity could appeal to television audiences. He just needs to be himself, and audiences will connect with that honesty in ways that scripted performances never achieve. But the key is creating formats that allow his natural leadership and mentoring abilities to emerge organically. Paul's first major television success came through a current affairs segments where he provided humorous commentary on social and political issues from an authentic working-class perspective that resonated with viewers who felt disconnected from mainstream media's typically elite viewpoints. His approach emphasized common sense over academic theory, practical experience over abstract expertise, and genuine humor over manufactured entertainment that felt forced or artificial. But Paul's most significant contribution to television was his development of what became known as authentic authority, the ability to command attention and respect through character and competence rather than position or credentials. Television audiences responded to Paul's obvious integrity and genuine concern for ordinary people's welfare, recognizing that his success hadn't corrupted his basic decency or separated him from the communities he represented. The success of Paul's television work created opportunities for him to use his growing platform to highlight and support other working-class performers, writers, and creative professionals who might not otherwise have received recognition in entertainment industry environments that typically favored people with elite backgrounds and connections. Paul became an unofficial mentor to dozens of emerging talents who benefited from his guidance and advocacy. Paul opened doors for all of us, recalled performer Steve Abbott, who worked with Paul on several television projects. But more than that, he showed us that success didn't require abandoning your authentic character or pretending to be someone you weren't. He demonstrated that working-class values and perspectives were actually strengths rather than limitations in entertainment contexts. Paul's mentoring of younger performers extended beyond professional guidance to include personal support during difficult transitions and challenges that accompanied sudden fame or career setbacks. He maintained the same approach that had worked with bridge construction apprentices, combining encouragement with accountability, support with challenge, and genuine care for people's long-term welfare rather than just immediate performance improvement. The development of Paul's signature comedy style reflected his leadership philosophy translated into entertainment terms: humor that built people up rather than tearing them down, observations that highlighted shared humanity rather than divisive differences, and storytelling that celebrated ordinary people's dignity and wisdom while acknowledging their struggles and imperfections without condescension or mockery. Paul's television success also provided platform for promoting Australian culture and values to international audiences in ways that challenged stereotypes while building genuine appreciation for the country's distinctive character and contributions. His approach emphasized authentic representation over marketing manipulation, education over propaganda, and building bridges between cultures rather than reinforcing divisions or misconceptions. The increasing demands of television production required Paul to develop new leadership skills related to managing creative teams, coordinating complex projects, and maintaining quality standards while working within budget constraints and deadline pressures that were very different from construction industry challenges but required similar attention to detail and commitment to excellence. Paul's natural mentoring instincts led him to take special interest in crew members and support staff who were often overlooked in entertainment industry hierarchies that focused attention on performers and executives while treating technical workers as expendable resources. His approach created more collaborative and efficient working environments while building relationships that lasted throughout his career. The financial success of Paul's television work provided resources for supporting charitable causes and community development projects that reflected his commitment to using success for purposes beyond personal benefit. He established scholarship programs for working-class students, supported trade education initiatives, and contributed to organizations that provided assistance to construction workers facing economic hardship or workplace injuries. But perhaps Paul's most important achievement during this period was demonstrating that authentic leadership could thrive in entertainment environments without requiring compromise of basic values or separation from original communities and relationships. His success provided model for other working-class individuals who aspired to broader influence while maintaining their essential character and commitment to serving others. As Paul's fame grew beyond Australian borders, he faced increasing pressure to modify his approach for international audiences, but his commitment to authenticity remained absolute. He understood that his influence depended entirely on maintaining the genuine character that audiences trusted, and that any attempt to become someone other than himself would ultimately destroy the foundation of his effectiveness as both entertainer and leader. The bridge builder was constructing new types of connections between classes, cultures, and communities that had previously been separated by artificial barriers and misconceptions that authentic leadership could overcome through patient relationship building and commitment to mutual understanding and respect. Chapter 4: The Authentic Voice. By 1985, Paul Hogan had evolved from bridge construction worker to television personality to cultural ambassador, but his greatest achievement was maintaining authentic character while using expanding influence to amplify working-class voices and values that had been marginalized in mainstream media and entertainment industries. At 36, Paul understood that his success carried responsibility for representing ordinary people's perspectives with dignity and accuracy while building bridges between different social groups that often viewed each other with suspicion or hostility. The development of the Crocodile Dundee character represented Paul's attempt to create an authentic Australian archetype that could communicate core values, integrity, humor, practical wisdom, and genuine kindness to international audiences without relying on stereotypes or caricatures that might reinforce misconceptions about working-class culture or Australian society. The character was carefully crafted to embody leadership qualities that Paul had observed and developed during his years in construction work and television mentorship. Mick Dundee isn't just entertainment, Paul explained to John Cornell during the character development process. He's a teaching tool for demonstrating that real strength comes from character rather than aggression, that wisdom often comes from experience rather than formal education, and that leadership means protecting and helping others rather than dominating or exploiting them for personal advantage. The creation process for Crocodile Dundee involved extensive consultation with working-class Australians from various backgrounds to ensure that the character accurately represented their values and experience rather than reflecting middle-class assumptions about working-class life. Paul insisted on authenticity in every detail, from dialogue patterns to behavioral habits, because he understood that credibility with working-class audiences required genuine understanding and respect for their perspectives. Paul's approach to character development reflected his leadership philosophy: collaborative rather than autocratic, inclusive rather than exclusive, and focused on service to community rather than personal glorification. He viewed Mick Dundee as vehicle for positive representation of working-class values rather than opportunity for individual career advancement, though the character's success would eventually provide both. The international success of Crocodile Dundee created unprecedented platform for Paul's authentic leadership message, reaching audiences across multiple continents who responded to the character's demonstration of leadership through service, protection of others, and maintenance of personal integrity under various pressures and temptations. The film became a cultural phenomenon because it addressed universal human needs for authentic role models and positive examples of masculine leadership that didn't depend on violence or domination. Paul's personal response to the film's massive success provided real-time demonstration of authentic leadership under extreme pressure, as sudden international fame could have easily corrupted his values or separated him from the communities and relationships that had shaped his character. Instead, he used success as platform for amplifying his mentorship message and supporting other working-class performers and creators who deserve broader recognition. Success doesn't change who you are, Paul told an interviewer during the height of Crocodile Dundee popularity. It just reveals who you've always been while giving you more opportunities to help others. The question is whether you use those opportunities for yourself or for something larger than yourself. For me, the choice has always been clear. The financial resources generated by Crocodile Dundee enabled Paul to establish formal mentorship programs for young performers, fund trade education initiatives, and support community development projects that reflected his commitment to using success for collective benefit rather than just personal advantage. These investments created lasting positive change in communities that had supported his development while providing models for other successful individuals who wanted to use their resources constructively. Paul's approach to fame management demonstrated authentic leadership principles applied to celebrity challenges that destroyed many entertainers who lacked strong value systems or supportive relationships. He maintained regular contact with his original bridge construction colleagues, continued living modestly despite enormous financial success, and refused opportunities that would have required compromising his basic character or values. The mentorship aspect of Paul's success extended to his work with international audiences who were inspired by Mick Dundee's example of authentic masculinity and leadership that contrasted sharply with Hollywood's typically violent or cynical male protagonists. Paul received thousands of letters from viewers who credited the character with helping them develop more positive approaches to relationships, conflict resolution, and personal responsibility. "I never expected the character to have such impact on people's lives," Paul reflected years later. "But I think audiences were hungry for positive examples of strength that didn't depend on hurting others, and leadership that focused on protecting and building up, rather than conquering and tearing down." Mick represented possibilities that people wanted to see in themselves and in their communities. Paul's international platform also provided opportunities for cultural diplomacy that improved understanding between Australia and other countries while challenging stereotypes and misconceptions that had previously limited Australia's global relationships. His authentic representation of Australian character created positive associations that benefited the country's tourism, trade, and cultural exchanges for decades. The success of Paul's authentic approach influenced other entertainers and public figures who began adopting similar strategies for maintaining integrity while achieving broad appeal. His example demonstrated that audiences preferred genuine character over manufactured persona, authentic emotion over artificial performance, and real wisdom over scripted cleverness when presented with clear alternatives. But perhaps Paul's most significant achievement during this period was proving that working-class values and perspectives could achieve international respect and influence when presented with confidence, authenticity, and commitment to positive service. His success opened doors for other working-class voices while demonstrating that leadership effectiveness depended more on character and competence than on social class or formal credentials. Paul's authentic voice had become a bridge between different cultures, classes, and communities, creating understanding and appreciation that hadn't previously existed while maintaining complete integrity to his original values and relationships. The working-class bridge builder had constructed connections spanning continents while never forgetting the foundations that made such achievements possible. As Paul approached the height of his international influence, he remained committed to the authentic leadership principles learned during his bridge construction years: service before self, others before ego, and community before individual advancement. These principles would be tested again as his success created new opportunities and challenges that required continued growth and adaptation without compromising essential character. Chapter 5. The Leader's Legacies. The decade following Crocodile Dundee presented Paul Hogan with the ultimate test of authentic leadership: how to maintain integrity and continue positive influence when success had eliminated most external pressures for growth and development. At 38, Paul possessed international fame, financial security, and cultural influence that most people could only dream of achieving. But he understood that real leadership was measured by impact on others rather than personal accumulation of wealth or recognition. Paul's approach to managing long-term success reflected the mentoring principles he had developed during his bridge construction years, using resources and influence to create opportunities for others, while maintaining authentic relationships with people who had supported his development before fame transformed his circumstances. He established what became known as success with service, demonstrating how achievement could be leveraged for collective benefit rather than just individual advantage. The mentorship programs that Paul developed during this period became models for how successful individuals could systematically invest in others' development while creating lasting positive change in their communities. Rather than simply donating money to existing organizations, Paul created new structures that directly connected successful mentors with aspiring individuals who needed guidance, resources, and encouragement to achieve their potential. "I learned everything I know about leadership from people who invested their time and wisdom in my development," Paul explained during the launch of his formal mentorship initiative. "The only way to honor that gift is to pass it along to others who can benefit from guidance and support. Success that doesn't serve others ultimately serves no one, including yourself." Paul's mentorship approach emphasized practical skill development combined with character building, recognizing that technical competence without integrity was ultimately destructive, while good intentions without capabilities were ineffective. His programs included both professional training and personal development components designed to produce leaders who could maintain authentic character while achieving significant positive impact. The international scope of Paul's influence created opportunities for cross-cultural mentorship that built understanding between different societies while addressing universal human needs for guidance, encouragement, and positive role models. His programs connected Australian mentors with international participants while bringing diverse perspectives to Australian communities that benefited from exposure to different approaches to leadership and personal development. Paul's continuing relationship with his original bridge construction colleagues provided crucial grounding that prevented the isolation and disconnection that often accompanied long-term celebrity status. He maintained regular contact with former work partners, supported their families during difficulties, and included them in social activities that kept him connected to the values and perspectives that had shaped his character. Paul never forgot where he came from or who helped him get where he was, recalled Tommy Richardson, Paul's former bridge construction foreman. He understood that success was a team effort and that he had obligations to the people who had believed in him before anyone else knew his name. That's what real leadership looks like, remembering your debts and paying them forward. The evolution of Paul's leadership philosophy during this period included deeper understanding of how authentic influence could be sustained across changing circumstances and extended beyond immediate relationships to impact communities and cultures that he might never directly encounter. His approach emphasized creating systems and structures that would continue producing positive results long after his direct involvement ended. Paul's work in tourism promotion demonstrated how authentic representation could benefit entire countries while maintaining individual integrity and avoiding the artificial patriotism or commercial manipulation that characterized most cultural ambassadorship efforts. His promotion of Australia emphasized genuine character and real attractions while respecting international audiences' intelligence and avoiding condescending or stereotypical approaches. The financial management of Paul's success reflected his leadership values applied to resource stewardship, using wealth to create opportunities for others while maintaining modest personal lifestyle that prevented disconnection from ordinary people's experiences and concerns. His approach demonstrated that financial success could enhance rather than compromise authentic character when guided by appropriate values and accountability structures. Paul's family relationships during this period provided another testing ground for authentic leadership principles applied to personal rather than professional contexts. His approach to parenting reflected the same mentoring philosophy that had guided his professional relationships, combining high expectations with strong support, encouraging independence while providing security, and modeling integrity rather than just discussing it abstractly. The charitable work that Paul undertook during his peak success years focused on causes that addressed systemic problems rather than just providing temporary relief, reflecting his understanding that effective leadership required addressing root causes rather than just managing symptoms. His investments in education, job training, and community development created lasting positive change that continued benefiting people long after media attention moved elsewhere. Paul's influence on other entertainers and public figures demonstrated how authentic leadership could be contagious, inspiring others to adopt similar approaches to fame management and social responsibility. His example showed that success didn't require sacrificing character or abandoning original communities, encouraging others to maintain their authenticity while using their platforms for positive influence. The international recognition that Paul received during this period, including awards, honors, and invitations to prestigious events, was handled with the same humility and perspective that had characterized his response to earlier success. He understood that external recognition was validation of his approach rather than justification for changing his methods or compromising his values. Perhaps most importantly, Paul's legacy during this period included the development of next-generation leaders who had been inspired by his example to pursue their own authentic leadership journeys. The ripple effects of his mentoring and influence began producing leaders in various fields who shared his commitment to authenticity, service, and positive impact on their communities. As Paul entered his 40s, he had successfully demonstrated that working-class values and authentic character could achieve and sustain international influence while creating lasting positive change that extended far beyond entertainment industry boundaries. His journey from bridge worker to global cultural ambassador had been guided consistently by the same leadership principles: service before self, others before ego, and community before individual advancement. The bridge builder had constructed a legacy that would continue connecting people across cultural, economic, and geographic divides long after his active career ended, proving that authentic leadership creates permanent positive change rather than just temporary celebrity or personal advantage. Epilogue: The Eternal Bridge Builder. As Paul Hogan approaches his 8th decade, his transformation from 32-year-old bridge worker to international leader represents one of the most compelling demonstrations in modern history of how authentic character and working-class wisdom can achieve global influence while maintaining complete integrity to original values and communities. His journey proves that real leadership emerges from service rather than ambition, from building others up rather than promoting yourself, and from creating connections that bridge differences rather than exploiting divisions for personal advantage. The mentorship legacy that Paul established during his entertainment career continues expanding through multiple generations of leaders who were inspired by his example to pursue their own authentic leadership journeys while maintaining commitment to positive service and character development. His influence can be traced through thousands of individuals who learned from his mentoring, adopted his leadership principles, and applied them in contexts ranging from education and business to community development and international relations. Paul showed all of us that you didn't have to choose between success and authenticity, reflected Dr. Sarah Williams, now a university chancellor, who first encountered Paul's leadership philosophy as a struggling student recipient of his scholarship program. He demonstrated that character could be your greatest asset rather than an obstacle to overcome, and that working-class values were actually advantages in leadership contexts where people desperately needed someone they could trust completely. The educational institutions that Paul established or supported continue producing leaders who combine technical competence with authentic character, creating positive change in communities around the world, while maintaining the values-based approach to leadership that Paul pioneered through his transition from construction work to global influence. These programs have become models for how successful individuals can systematically invest in others' development while creating lasting institutional change. Paul's influence on entertainment industry culture represents perhaps his most significant systemic impact, as his example encouraged other performers and creators to maintain authentic character while using their platforms for positive social influence rather than just personal enrichment. The ripple effects of his approach continue influencing how celebrities, public figures, and successful individuals understand their responsibilities to their communities and the broader society that made their achievements possible. The international relationships that Paul built through his authentic representation of Australian character created lasting diplomatic and cultural benefits that continue serving both Australia and partner countries decades after his most active period of cultural ambassadorship. His approach demonstrated how individual authenticity could achieve national objectives while building genuine understanding between different societies and cultures. Paul's family relationships during his peak success years provided ongoing demonstration of how authentic leadership principles could be applied to personal context, creating strong relationships that survived the pressures of fame while modeling healthy approaches to success management for other families facing similar challenges. His children and grandchildren continue reflecting the values he demonstrated rather than just discussed, proving that authentic leadership creates lasting influence through example rather than rhetoric. The community development projects that Paul supported throughout his career continue producing positive results in working-class communities that provided the foundation for his character development. His investments in education, job training, and local business development created economic opportunities that enabled others to achieve their potential while contributing to community prosperity and stability. Perhaps most remarkably, Paul's authentic approach to leadership has influenced individuals he never directly encountered through the example provided by his public behavior, decision-making, and response to various challenges and opportunities. His demonstration that success could enhance rather than compromise character has inspired countless people to pursue their own leadership development while maintaining integrity to their values and communities. The bridge construction metaphor that defined Paul's early career has proven prophetic in describing his ultimate contribution to human development and social progress. He succeeded in building connections between social classes that had previously been separated by suspicion and misunderstanding, between countries that had limited appreciation for each other's character and values, and between generations that needed positive examples of how to achieve success while maintaining authentic character. The leadership philosophy that Paul developed through his transition from bridge work to international influence continues serving as guide for individuals facing their own leadership challenges in various contexts. His emphasis on service before self, authenticity over image, and community before individual advancement provides timeless principles that remain relevant regardless of changing circumstances or cultural shifts. As Paul reflects on his remarkable journey from working-class origins to global influence, his greatest satisfaction comes not from personal achievements, but from the knowledge that his authentic leadership has created lasting positive change in countless lives, while demonstrating that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary impact when guided by genuine character and commitment to serving others. "I was just a bridge worker who got lucky," Paul frequently tells people who ask about his success. "I learned that luck means being ready when opportunity comes, and being ready means developing character that can handle whatever challenges or responsibilities success brings with it." The most important thing is remembering that leadership is about building bridges between people, not building monuments to yourself. The eternal bridge builder continues his work through the example he provides, the institutions he established, the people he mentored, and the principles he demonstrated throughout his remarkable journey. His legacy proves that authentic leadership creates permanent positive change rather than temporary celebrity, and that working-class values can achieve international respect when demonstrated with confidence, integrity, and commitment to serving purposes larger than individual advancement. Paul Hogan's transformation from bridge construction to global leadership represents triumph of character over circumstances, authenticity over artifice, and service over self-promotion that continues inspiring leaders around the world to pursue their own authentic influence while building bridges that connect rather than walls that divide. His journey demonstrates that extraordinary impact is possible for ordinary people when they commit to authentic leadership that serves others while maintaining complete integrity to their foundational values and relationships. The bridge builder's work is never finished. Paul Hogan has constructed connections that will endure long after his individual efforts end, proving that authentic leadership creates lasting positive change that extends through multiple generations of people inspired to build their own bridges between dreams and reality, between different communities and cultures, and between the world as it is and the world as it could become through authentic leadership guided by genuine character and commitment to serving others.